Welcome to our episode of Biblical Archaeology, From the Ground Down. Presented by Bible Interact and hosted by Dr. George Sparks. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of the Bible from leading experts in the field of archaeology.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. David Graves, an experienced biblical archaeologist and CEO of Electronic Christian Media. I'm here today with another exciting episode on our Archaeology Discoveries channel, where we discuss important archaeological artifacts related to the Bible. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe to our channel.
Welcome, people. My name is Dr. George Sparks. I have with me Dr. David Graves, PhD from Aberdeen University. And this is Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down. Today we're going to do something different. Ask Dr. Graves if he would give us a little bit of a rendering of his background, what got him into archaeology, and then after he gives us the lowdown on his history, then he's going to tell us about his excavations and some of the exciting things that he has found. What he finds or what he found would be unique in his experience, most exciting, one of a kinds, and keep us informed here on what he has done. So everybody's story is a little different, how they got into the field and where it started. Some started being with their parents, taking them to museums. Sometimes an influence was a teacher in high school, maybe even in grade school. You really don't know. I remember years ago, there was this young lady. She didn't know exactly what she wanted to do in college. And I did this little game where I gave her a contest of questions. And if she got the question right, I gave her a little something from history. It could have been an old newspaper, which wasn't the cost because it wasn't the expensive items, but a lot of people don't know about historical events and how easily it is to get items from, for instance, American history. And that led to her degree in history, and then she became a teacher. So you never know what is going to prompt people in their life. Well, Dr. Graves, are you ready to go?
Yep.
Let us know.
George. Always
All
good
right,
to you.
this will be interesting. So what exactly led you into the field of archaeology?
Okay, well, that's kind of an interesting question, and I've been kind of working on that for the last few months. I've been working on my memoirs, so I've been putting all this together in a bunch of stories, and the adventures of an archaeologist. Beneath the Sands of Time is the title of my memoirs.
All right.
So this goes back a long way. It actually goes back to when I was about 8 years old. And when I was 8 years old, I was at our church youth center. And in that youth center, we had a library. And I was perusing the library one day, and I noticed these 4 volumes on the shelf. It was the International Standard Encyclopedia. Some of the folks out there may know it. It's an old standby encyclopedia, 4 volumes. It's still available online, by the way, digitally. But I was opening it up, and inside I saw all of these artifacts, pictures of them. And I was just fascinated as a youngster, thinking that these things are real. It's not myth, these stories we're reading in the Bible. There's actual artifacts out there. And so I would study that book for hours on end, looking through all the pictures and just in awe of all of these things, and thought, wow, it'd be great to go and see some of these things in a museum and dig them up. So that's how I got basically started. And of course, as a kid, you're reading all these books and things on adventures. Well, the jettison I had to probably, this is my undergrad course on biblical archaeology that I took at Tyndale College and Seminary in Ontario. And it was in that course that they asked me to do a paper. So I decided, well, I'll write on Sodom and Gomorrah. That seems interesting. And my professor says, I know a guy that says he's found it. And his name was Dr. Bryant Wood. He was doing his PhD at the time in Syro-Palestinian archaeology at the University of Toronto. And I had a friend of mine that had gone to Toronto Baptist Seminary. So I was familiar with the school. So I contacted Bryant and said, could I come down and have a chat? And I went down, and Bryant was cordial and gave me all his, back in those days, it was just a photocopied little pamphlet that was kind of stapled together in, I don't know, 10 or 15 pages. That was called the Bible in Spade magazine. Now it's a full color, full 8.5 by 11. But back in those days, it was quite modest. So he went and got his copies and gave me copies of all the magazine with his proposed discovery at Tel El Hammam, or at Baba Dra. Tel El Hammam wasn't even excavated back in those days and hardly known by anyone. So that's my first introduction to real biblical archaeology. Was the class that I took and my introduction to Bryant, and we've remained friends and colleagues for many years since. And when I was doing a multimedia study Bible, CD-ROM, I wanted to collect some pictures and photographs. So I contacted Bryant, and he sent me a whole stack of these photographs. Back in those days, they weren't scanned, it wasn't digital. So he had to give me the actual prints. So I had a whole stack of prints, and I've got a binder now with a photo album with all these prints inside of it, all labeled and marked. And I've got them scanned, of course, but he was the individual who was gracious in giving me all of these artifacts from the Holy Land until I was able to go to the Holy Land myself with my mother. I think that was in 1979 that we went to Israel. And I was able to take a bunch of photographs myself. So that's how it all started, and sort of got me jettisoned into the area of archaeology.
So it started at school with an encyclopedia set, and then it got your interest because of the pictures, and then the question in your head was, maybe I can do this and be a part and see these cool things. And then you got interested in, and somebody gave you a heads up to Dr. Bryant Wood, and you went and you made a contact, and I guess you went and met him. Did you met him personally, where he gave you the old Bible in spades? I bet you it's hugely pixelated back then too, not these nice digital things we have today.
Yeah.
And in 1979 was your first trip to Israel with your mom.
Yeah, I think I was 79. Let me.
That's okay, the exact date. But did you talk your mom into taking you? Was it a part of a church group, or you just to go by yourself and get tickets?
Interesting question. It was 1996.
1996.
Yeah, 20 years difference. I have a terrible memory for dates. I tell my students, you don't need to remember any dates. Maybe 586 or 70 AD, and all these other dates. The big joke in our family is, what's your mother's birthday? I can't remember dates.
Oh,
well, I can never remember them.
I just got, like close people like my son, wife, brothers, sisters, mom, those dates. And besides that, I'm probably pretty oblivious to everything else.
Well, I'm
so
not even
I can understand.
I'm good with big picture items like media and graphics. I'm great at that. I can remember a face, but just don't ask me a date. So anyway,
so when you're going over to the Holy Land with your mom, what was your
we had planned it. I had planned originally to take a bunch of students over to Israel and do a tour from my university, Crandall University at the time. But in 96, there was some issues with the war over there. It wasn't, there were some flare-ups, we might say, and students didn't think it was quite safe and didn't want to go. So they all pulled out, and we didn't have enough. You need at least 10. So I said, well, let's go anyway. And I asked my mother, she's a intrepid traveler, even into her 70s, late 70s, she was traveling to Japan, and we went to Colorado together and all kinds of things. But I said, Mom, want to go? She said, yeah, sure, why not? Let's go. I've always wanted to go to the Holy Land. So here we are, two old gray folks. I had gray hair back then too. And my mom was platinum gray as well. That's where I got it from, being premature gray. And we headed off to Israel, and I was going to take a bunch of photographs for my trip and for the CD-ROM that I had developed. I wanted to add some of my own photographs to the ones that Brian Wood had given me. And I had planned on, I had seen some people are showing these 360-degree, images. Today you take your cell phone, you just do a 360 and you upload it to a software and presto. Back in those days, I was using it wasn't even a digital camera. It was an LSR using film. So I had a whole bag of film, take pictures over there. And in order to get these 360-degree photographs, I had to use a tripod. I had to put 2 different levels, special level adapters on the top of the tripod. And then I had to level the first one so that you can rotate it, and then put another one on top. And then you had to rotate the other one on top. And then you had to put your camera on top of that. And then you had to focus. And then you would take click, move it, click, move it, click. And so you'd get 360, and then you had to physically stitch them together to get this 360. Well, off I go, and I had a few places I wanted to do this in. I wanted to do Capernaum. I want to do the synagogue in Capernaum. I wanted to get a 360 of that. And the other place I wanted to go was Masada. So I lugged all of this camera equipment. I had a big bag of camera equipment over my shoulder, and we made it all the way up to the top of Masada. We took the cable car, of course. I ran up to the spot on the very top. There's an outlook at the very top, over top of Herod's palace. I wanted to get a 360 of that. So I start setting up my camera equipment. I put the first level on, get it leveled, the second one leveled. I put my camera on, and I started click, 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 click. I could take all of my photos. I get down to Capernaum. I do the same thing down at Capernaum, set all my equipment up. But of course, we're talking film, remember? I couldn't get it developed till I got home. I got home and I got my film all developed, and I'm so excited. I'm going to have all this really great photography, 360-degree images. I get my packet of film or my prints back, and they're all blurry. I had forgotten to focus my camera.
Oh, gosh sakes, man.
I was so focused. I was so focused on making sure it was level that I forgot to go and focus it, because all manual focus back then.
Right. That's so true. I remember doing stuff like that and have to redo it sometimes quite a bit, sometimes the whole thing all over again. But that's tragic. Yeah, there's all those little rolls of films and stuff like that. That's what a pain back then.
Yeah. So that's going to be a fun story for my memoir. One of
Yeah,
many.
you laugh now, but oh my God, that would be really frustrating. That'd
Oh,
be
I
hugely
was just
frustrating.
heartsick after all. You can't just run back, and take the pictures over again.
Right.
And so my multimedia study Bible had, video in it, music. I actually had a friend that was a musician. So he did compositions, one-of-a-kind compositions for music for the entire scroll. I think I have about 15 or 16 different original pieces of music
Uh-huh.
with the shofar for the Roman period and trotting through the Exodus in the desert. I can hear it now in my head. And it was pretty neat at the time how he was
So
able
this
to.
was 1996. Now, were you teaching back then?
I was just starting my teaching career. I had just been hired on as the director of computer services at Crandall University.
Uh,
And so I was um, just starting basically my career.
and
So,
were you at your bachelor's right now, or were you at your master's?
well, I was actually not, at that point, I had my Bachelor of Theology. I did that in 80 at Crandall University. It was a 5-year degree instead of a 4-year degree. That's another story. I couldn't, I had to transfer from New Brunswick up to Ontario and transfer credits from my old college. I could only do 2 years there in Bible. I had to transfer to another college. So I transferred up to Ontario and they wouldn't accept my grade 12 as grade 13 equivalent. And they wanted me to take another year. So I had to take, instead of 4 years for my bachelor, I had to take 5 years, an extra year. Had gone through all that they offered in the Bible department. So I ended up going to the seminary and taking courses in the seminary and getting those credited to my bachelor degree, even though they were master's level courses. And then when I went on to do my PhD, I didn't have a master's, so they started me on a master's program at Highland Theological College, connected with Aberdeen. And then after 2 years, if you provided sufficient writing skills and research skills, then you could bypass the master's and go directly into the PhD program. And that's what I did.
So, what were your professors like? Do you have your favorite professor? Do you have any mean professors? Do you have any professors with no people skills, professor?
I had some amazing professors, really. They all left a great mark on me. One of my favorites was Don Leggett in Ontario Bible College. He was actually in the seminary prophets class for him. I wrote a commentary in Habakkuk that I want to turn into a book sometime, but running out of time. But anyway, I got an A on that one from him. But he could just lecture and then he would venture off into almost sermonizing, exegeting the passages. And he was just a wonderful professor. And then I had Dr. Roger Nicole. He was a guest lecturer. I had him actually at in the Maritimes at Atlantic Baptist College. He did a series of lectures on the person and work of Christ, guest lecture. And then a year later, I had him doing the same course at the seminary in Toronto. And they wanted me to take this class called audio visuals. You had to memorize how many parts there were to an overhead projector. And I said, that's a useless course for me. So I said, look, I'll go to the seminary and I'll take the person and work of Christ. And then it was an intensive course. It was going to be taught in 2 weeks. I said, I'll take that. I had to read Berkauer on the person of Christ. And I said, I'll take that if it credit it to my undergrad. And I won't have to take that lame course called audio visuals. Well, they agreed. So I went off to the seminary and I'm sitting in class with all these seminary students, but they'd gone through a BA program. They had no idea about most of the Bible. They didn't know what questions to ask. And, I just had 3 years of Bible. So I knew the the questions to ask and stuff. So I was kind of putting them to shame, and I was kind of they were out of their element. But he was a great professor. The late Roger Nicole, was the world's leading others. He could quote you the page numbers. He had a photographic memory, and but he also had a serious medical condition. So he's lecturing away one day in class, and all of a sudden, his head goes down, and there's dead silence in the class.
Oh, shit.
There's nobody moving, and they're just holding their breath. Did the guy fall over dead, or what happened? And then about a minute, it felt like a lifetime, he picks up his head and just starts lecturing where he left off. The guy's got narcolepsy.
Oh, wow.
You could fall asleep, and of course you can't drive with it. But we didn't know that. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting story. Professor falling asleep in his own lectures.
See, that's unique. That's interesting. That's
a fun story in my
right.
memoirs.
That would be kind of like, what the heck just happened?
So
did anybody get up to shake him or anything? Or everybody's just sitting there waiting. Nobody bothered to get the dean or saying like, "Hey, something just happened to your professor." Just everybody's sitting there watching.
Well, a lot of us were wondering whether we had to jump up and do CPR on him because we didn't know what happened. It was
Okay.
crazy. But great professor. And then another story is we go down. I go down to get my mail one day, and here I come around the corner, and Dr. Nicole's got his hand in the stamp box that's being collected for the missionaries. He come to find out the guy's a stamp collector, and he wanted some of the stamps out of the stamp box.
Oh.
So we had a few chuckles and few words on that, and went on my ways. But I was going to do a paper on limited atonement for class, and he happened to be one of the world's leading experts on that, and had written a couple of journal articles against C.H. Dodd, who took an expiation. It's technical theological issues anyway. But Roger went to the library with me, and he got all of his articles out of the library and the periodical, and photocopied them and gave them to me, and put me in line with Dr. John Owen, The Death of Death and the Death of Christ, which I'd never heard of before, but a masterpiece of writing, one of the Puritans. So I owe a lot to him, and helped me with my theological progress, and that kind of critical thinking helps you with archaeology, because you have to be able to solve puzzles, figure out what's going on in a square, and put the pieces of the puzzle together in place. And so those early days in seminary helped me formulating my thinking skills and deductive skills. And probably the most important course I ever took was logic.
So did you ever have any odds with the professor, like somebody just didn't get along with for some odd reason?
Oh, if I found out, there was a cantankerous professor, normally I would just avoid the course and take something else. There were the few courses I had to take. One does come to mind. It was an English class I had with an English lady and English professor, and we never got along at all. And she wanted me to write something, and I didn't want to write it. And I'm a cantankerous person too. I'm pretty strong-minded. So that's why I've always had my own boss, my own company, and my own publishing company. So I just can't stand people telling me what to do, especially if I think it's not the right thing to do.
All right. So
I'm my own man.
Okay. So like all this time, one English teacher you didn't get along with. Okay. So when did you actually decide like you're going to work in archaeology, and what was your first excavation?
Yeah, well, I wanted to do an archaeology dig with Brian Wood at McOtter for years and years and years, but they're costly. You've got a family, you've got a job, life gets in the way. And it was only after my kids grew up and went away, and I was able to afford going on these digs, that I was at a conference. I was at it was ETS, Near East Archaeological Society conference, and it happened to be in, I think it was in New Orleans, and I had done a presentation there. Oh, I think it was New Orleans. I forget now. We do one every year at a different city, so we've been to Philadelphia, San Diego. Every year there's different city. Anyway, I was at the conference sitting there saying to a friend of mine, I'd gone to Egypt with Biblical Associates for Biblical Research, ABR, with Gary Byers. You've had Gary on your program, Mike Ludeni, and a few other individuals from ABR. They had put a tour together for archaeologists to Egypt. So I went to that, met Mike, and so Mike was at this conference. I said, I'd like to go this year to Khirbet El Maqader with Dr. Brian Wood. Remember, I'd met him way back in Toronto years ago. And Mike says, well, no, we're not going this year. It's too dangerous. But, I'm going on a new dig this year with Dr. Stephen Collins in Jordan. And why don't you come along? So that was what I did. I joined up with Dr. Collins and went to dig at Tel El Hammam in Jordan. And that was my first season. And that's where I met Dr. Scott Stripling. Scott and I were, neither one of us were doctors then, together. And I asked him to help me out with some of the writing and the work that we were doing with the bath complex that I discovered. I said, come on over, give me a hand with that. So that's how that all started. And then I went back the next year and the next year and the next year. And for 10 years, I went back every year to Jordan, and then had a couple of other excursions. Scotty went over to Shiloh and to be the director over there one year. So he left me. And so I said, well, I'm going to go over and dig with you, Scott, sometime. We need to dig together again. So I signed up for the first season that he was the director at Shiloh. And I supervised the square Roman area at Shiloh. And then I also went to Qumran with one of my professors. Well, not my professor, but a professor that I taught beside. It was Dr. Randall Price from Liberty University when I was teaching archaeology for the online course for Liberty. And Randall was putting together an excavation of a cave at Qumran and asked if I would like to come along. And I was teaching on the online, I was in charge of the online archaeology program at Liberty, and Randall was in charge of the residential program at Liberty. So we worked together, brought some of our students. The interesting thing is that two of the universities I've been associated with, I've never visited. I did my PhD from Highland Theological College in Dingwall, just north of Inverness in Scotland. And in the British-Scottish system, colleges form together under a university, and you get your degree from a university. So, for example, at Oxford University, it's composed of all these colleges.
Right.
Jesus College and Regent Park College. And so all of these colleges form the university, and the same thing in Scotland. So I did my PhD and had visited Highland Theological College, but they're associated with Aberdeen, and I never went there. I met my professor, my supervisor, I Howard Marshall at the airport one day. I was flying in, he was flying out. We decided we had an hour to kill, and so we could meet and have our supervisors conflab in the airport. At another one, it was actually one of those conferences that I used to attend in the United States, and he was there, and we had a place where we could get together and go over my work for my dissertation, and maybe point out anything. So I had to meet once a year with my supervisors, but I did fly over to Scotland to my other college. But there's one I'd never been to. And of course, I taught the online course for Liberty. I've never been to the Liberty campus. The first time that, I physically was with a Liberty professor was when I was digging at Qumran together with Dr. Randall Price. And then when I taught at Faith Bible Institute, the archaeology course there, both of the individuals that were in charge of that program, Will Honeycutt and John Yates, they are both graduates from Liberty. So I got to work with a couple of the other graduates from Liberty. But yeah, I've never been to Aberdeen. I've never been to Liberty, which is kind of interesting. And another
So you
story,
did it online.
Yeah, all work was done online. All my students were online.
So in your excavation experience, what would you say was some of your defining moments on excavations? So of course you was at Shiloh and Tel El Hammam in Jordan, Shiloh, of course, in Israel, Tel El Hammam in Jordan, and then back in Israel at Qumran on the west side of the Dead Sea. So out of those places, what is the number one discovery archaeology that you can remember?
Yeah. Well, I've kind of got two. I would say the first one would be when I came around the corner and I discovered a little corner of a building at Tel El Hammam. That was in the second season, and we come to identify it as the city of Livius. So I was able to find the bath complex for the city of Livius and redefine its location, published on that. So my claim to fame is finding the city of Livius, really, and redefining it. The second thing would be an Iron Age storage jar. I think you've got one in your office there somewhere.
Is that the one in your backdrop picture?
Yes, it is right here on the.
Okay, yeah.
Right there over my shoulder,
Right.
down. Yeah, so that was the one that we discovered intact, not a scratch on it, not a crack, not a chip out of it. It was amazing. And it was only like 8 inches or so below the surface. We were digging in an Iron Age house, residential area. And there was a storage room behind it. We found 8 of these jars, but all but one of them was broken. And this one was in the center of the room. And for whatever reason, probably the way that the roof caved in when it was destroyed, the city and the room was destroyed. It escaped destruction, and we found that entire storage jar. And I had since probably taken, I don't know, 12 or 15 whole pieces out of it. I was kind of the king of whole pieces from Tel El Hammam. Some of them Roman, some Middle Bronze, and this one Iron Age. But I seen Gary was quite jealous, actually, and he finally found a whole piece a few years later. But
Right.
joking with it.
Okay, then. Okay, that was one. You said you had another one.
Well, I would say Livius, and then of course the Iron Age
The whole piece.
jar.
Okay.
That would be the second piece. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now you're down to number 3. So you still got Shiloh and Qumran. Out of those two, is that where the next one's going to be?
Qumran would be number 3. That's where we had. I would say that's where we found the. There's a piece of parchment that we found inside the cave. We found a scroll, a piece of a scroll. So we know scrolls were in that cave, but that was kind of the smoking gun. We found the linen that the scrolls were wrapped in as well. And I was a registrar on the excavation, so I was registering all of the artifacts as they would bring them out. I forget now exactly how many I had. I think there was around 800 or so artifacts that I had to register. And they were bringing them out so fast I could hardly write them all down, and then I had to package them up and treat them specially. some in envelopes, some in Tyvek, some had to be put in vials. So I had to do all that. So I had to multitask. I had a helper, but it was a lot of work.
Mhm.
So that was pretty famous. And that one actually made the front cover of National Geographic's magazine,
Okay.
our
Good,
excavation.
because when I go looking for a slide, if you don't have a slide of that, send me pictures that you have personally for some of this, because I'm going to put them in this podcast, and I'm going to see what I can find online. But since you mentioned it was on the National Geographic, uh, I'll go looking for it. But if you have a nice picture of that, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
So now you're leaving. I'm going to just put you on the spot because you said the three things. Well, two of your best finds was you found Livius. That's an
Yep.
ancient city. We did a podcast on that. A couple of them, really. And
Mhm.
then you found the amphora that's right behind you. That's two. And now
Yeah.
you're at Qumran with Dr. Randall Price, your fellow professor from Liberty University, and you're finding remnants of artifacts that from this cave, which also at one time contained amphoras with the Dead Sea Scrolls that had been looted out probably by the local Bedouin at that time. But I'm going to put you on the spot. Isn't there something you're forgetting here?
Oh,
Tell
probably
El
was.
Mom. What about Tell El Mom?
Oh, well, of course, had the privilege for a number of seasons to work in the Middle Bronze period and discovery of Sodom.
Okay, yeah, right, all right. Okay, okay. If
But,
this is how you want to be, uh,
but to be honest, though, George, Dr. Stephen Collins is really the one that discovered uh, the city of Sodom. And I just sort of happened to have the privilege of being able to dig alongside of him for 3 seasons, at least in the Middle Bronze and Iron Age areas.
right.
My claim to fame was I was actually the lead discoverer and supervisor of the Roman area, and Dr.
Uh,
Collins let me go and chase that, which was my really claim to fame, and so that's why I claimed it as the primary discovery. But
I understand that.
yeah,
Yes, but did you find a girlfriend at Tell El Mom?
yeah,
And don't
I've,
go like, oh, okay, now go ahead.
yeah,
I'm trying
yeah,
to help you out here.
yeah, yeah. We were digging away, and my wife Arena, we met there on the dig many years ago, and I have a story actually on
That's what we're after. We're after we need some of that the soap opera scandal stuff going on here.
Yeah, our first date was driving the Roman road in a four-wheel drive in
Nice.
the Wadi with he was our surveyor, Kataiba, and another lady. So four of us driving the Roman road. But it was a
Okay.
Valentine's Day, February the 14th, and my wife asked me, what do I want for Valentine's Day? And I said, well, I'd love to have an oil lamp. I like collecting oil lamps. It's one of the things I just fascinated by them, all the different shapes and styles and so forth. So I said, I'd like an oil lamp for Valentine's Day, just half joking, and with an inscription on it. So I was even more specific.
Okay.
Well, not 10 minutes later, she yells up from the square. I was up top doing my paperwork. She says, I found one for you. Here's your Valentine's present. I thought she was joking. I looked down, she had something in her hand, so she holds it up to me and sends it up to me, and I look at it, and sure enough, it does. It's got a Greek inscription on it. It's a eulogia, which is a souvenir made in Jerusalem of an oil lamp. And
Right.
the letters actually form the words, Jesus' light shines for all. So I got my Valentine's present that day. It's just on cue.
Right. That's amazing. That's So you met your wife at this time. That was your first date on Valentine's Day.
No, not,
Then you asked,
well, those were two different times,
oh,
but,
okay, there are two different digs or two different days.
oh, those were two different digs. So one
Okay.
year, one year we did the Roman road and the four-wheel drive. That was earlier on when we first met. And then, of course, later on when we were married, she was digging with us, and that's what happened on Valentine's Day that year. Yeah, you got to
Okay.
realize we've dug for over 15 years, over
Right.
15 years at
Wow.
Tel El
That's
Hammam.
true.
So, one year blurs into the next. I'm putting them in order and telling some of the stories. I got lots of them. It's going to be about 600 pages, I think.
You gotta give us some of that soap opera stuff in there. So
Yeah.
when did okay, so you met your wife at the dig, but how long were you guys since you met at the dig? Did you both live in Canada or separate locations?
Um, well, she lived in Russia. She's Russian, and I
Uh-huh.
lived in Canada, so that complicated matters a lot. So I had to go over to Russia and live there for a number of years. And
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, so I lived in Russia in Moscow for 2 years, two and a half, and then we came back to Canada. I lived there for a while, and then we've moved wanted to retire in Portugal. So we moved to Portugal. So I've been around a lot of different countries, um, and finally now I'm back here in Canada. And my wife is in Russia. That's a whole nother story of COVID and the war, and that's that's probably for a whole podcast.
Okay, so you met, but you lived in completely different locations. So how did you actually get together where you wanted to be married? That's a distance relationship. That's
Well,
that's
it
good
was
difficult.
long. It was long distance for a number of years, and then I moved to Russia, and we got married there in Russia.
Okay, you moved to Russia. All right. And okay, so what you dug with Dr. Scott Stripling. Was Gary Byers also with you at the time you were at Shiloh? So was Dr. Byers there? I mean Gary Byers, right?
Yeah,
Dean of
yeah. Gary was with us actually the season one at Tel El Hammam, and
uh-huh.
every season after that, I dug with Gary, and then even when we went over to Shiloh, Gary was there, and even when I went to McCotter, um, I dug at McCotter. I wanted to dig at McCotter all those years with Dr. Bryant Wood, and I actually got to dig with him the very last day of the last season at McCotter. I was flying in to go to Qumran to dig there, and so Scott picked me up at the airport and took me to McCotter because he was closing off the season there
Mhm.
forever. He's not going to dig there anymore. And Dr. Bryant Wood happened to be there. So my lifelong dream was to dig with Bryant.
That's pretty cool.
And I
So
did.
something's
Yeah,
just happened by chance, right? Yeah.
one day I dug there.
One day.
Scotty says, you got to come and dig with us for one day. You got to put that on your resume. And I
Well,
did.
that is cool, though. You know how things seem to fall in place and everything like that, and
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So, so you're there, and you're digging at you're heading towards Qumran, but then you spend a day at Tel McCarter to dig there. Now, the significance for the listening audience at Tel McCarter, I'm just going to say it is one of the candidates, just to be fair in a broad way, one of the candidates for the city of Ai, or some say Ai. And that was the second battle that the Israelites fought under Joshua when they entered into the promised land. So Jericho and then Ai.
Yeah.
And the first battle they lost at Ai because Achan stole some gold. They were supposed to consecrate Jericho, not take anything. And Achan did, which the people said, well, why did we lose? And well, we just say the word sin in the camp, right? That's where we get that term from, sin in the camp.
Yeah.
But that second city is Ai. It's just
Yeah.
spelled AI, which means ruin.
Yeah. And I
And that's
think
where you
that
guys are excavating.
I think that they have a really solid case for arguing that it is I instead of et tel, which is just across the road. And there was another site, Kiribati, that Dr. Livingston had excavated at, who was also a member of ABR with Dr. Bryant Wood and Scott Stripling and Dr. Livingston, the late Dr. Livingston. So, but I think that Kiribati El Makata is the best candidate for I, and that's worth a whole another paper and argument. But I did get to dig there for one day, and so I can legitimately put it on my resume. And it happened to be with Dr. Wood, which I had dreamed of digging with him there.
Now, of course, I'll just say lately to bring it kind of up to date is behind you. You have all the books that you have written, and you wrote a total of like 30 books now.
Yeah, yeah.
And
30,
yeah.
I'm on my 32nd now with my memoirs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've been busy putting all of my classes and all of my courses and all of my teaching into books. The material from the CD-ROM, because what happened was Microsoft was supporting the code to run the scroll, the multimedia study Bible that I had developed. I had started it with Windows 95, and they carried it all the way up to, I think, to ME or 2000. But after that, they no longer supported it. Microsoft, I used a Microsoft program to develop it, the same one they use for the encyclopedia called Encarta.
Mm-hmm.
But because they were no longer supporting the program with their operating system, it couldn't run anymore. It was bought out by a gaming company. Disney tried to buy it first, but they said they didn't want a Bible program after they flew me to Chicago. I was going to sign a big contract. It was quite a signing bonus. But that fell through, and then another company called eGames took it over and purchased it, a family gaming company. But it is since no longer so available. So what I did is I converted all of the 195,000 word material that was in it. I converted the cultural background of the Old Testament, the cultural background of the New Testament, key themes of the Old Testament. New Testament was a class I taught at Crandall. The history of biblical archaeology was the class I taught at Oxford University. And I expanded that because I taught the history of British biblical archaeology at Oxford to the Canadian students. I had some from the Netherlands, from Redeemer College, and they all met, and we taught the class on site at Oxford University at Regent Park College. Those stories are all in my memoirs. But I turned that material, plus I expanded it to not just British archaeologists that the course was taught on. I expanded it to all archaeologists. My book, the red one behind me there, called The History of the History of Archaeology, of Biblical Archaeology. And so a lot of my material has been converted into books, and it's been quite a wonderful life experience. Lots of stories to tell. So I thought I'd put those now in my memoirs.
Right. So yeah, it's quite a collection of books you got behind you, and yeah, you actually wrote them. So your book collection behind you is the ones you wrote.
Well, yes, and a few of the books. The Seven Churches is actually the material for my dissertation, my PhD. There was a couple of books that I've re-edited and republished, so they're older materials. Smith's Bible Dictionary and Easton's Bible Dictionary. I completely reformatted them, modern font, and I put pictures in them and footnotes and bibliography material that wasn't in the original. So there's value added. You're not just getting the old stuff. You're getting it brought up to date. So I completely re-edited those works. And then William Ramsey, I redid a couple of his books. Stalkers, Life of Jesus, Life of Paul. They're just easy reads. They're smaller, but again, they're re-edited. I've added pictures and updated the footnotes because they weren't really good at doing that. Again, value added. Just reintroducing some of the old classics to the modern bookshelf.
Yeah, I got quite a few of your books over here too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's well, you've been around, and
Yeah.
so, but that's now. I'm just going to get nosier. Now, you got how many kids? You got two kids,
I have two grown daughters. Yes.
two grown daughters, and how many grandkids?
Three.
So, two daughters, three grandkids, and
And a dog.
okay. Now, do they live in Canada with you?
Not with me. They live here in Canada, though. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I meant. They live in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so okay, you got you got your two daughters and your grandkids and the dog all living in Canada, but your wife is in Portugal
With the dog.
with the dog. So
We have a
all
purebred
over the
German.
place.
We have a purebred German Shepherd.
Oh, I used to have a German Shepherd. They're fun dogs.
Oh, beautiful dog. And she's so well trained. My wife has done a wonderful job in training her. She's just as amazing. Listens so well and is just so smart. But I go over in the winters and spend I can only spend 60 days there, or 90 days, sorry, 93 months at a time over there. And the whole issues with the visas and trying to transfer between countries is an issue. And yeah, we live an interesting life.
Well, that is interesting. That between Canada and Portugal, where would you like to live right now?
Oh, I'd sooner live in Portugal, but yeah, it's beautiful and a nice spot to retire in. But you got to have a visa, and that takes time. And mine ran out, and now I got to reapply. And yeah, and then of course trying to deal with doctors and medications and things. It complicates life.
Right. So that's quite a distance between you and your wife, though. But I know that you just been over there for quite a while, and then you basically came back.
Well, the advantages, of modern technology, you can do video conferencing on a regular basis and keep in touch, keep up to date. So kind of daily communications there to maintain.
Well, you never know, that even though you're not in the field for a while, cool stuff can happen. And just for instance, cool stuff can happen. We were talking about this before the program. My wife, Sharisa, reintroduced us because I only knew you for 2 weeks because you were my dig supervisor at Tallahassee Mom 15 years ago or something. And my wife reintroduced because I was starting to do a podcast for Bible Interact. And I said to Bible Interact, I said, I'd like to do my own thing. So let's call it Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down. And they actually tried to pick that back and thought, well, if we do that, then that's what I want to do. I think it's a cool name. And we used to have a studio. They used to have a studio, so everybody had to go to a studio downtown Albuquerque. And then when COVID hit, it actually kind of did us a favor because we found out that we could do podcasts just as nicely at home.
Yeah.
Okay. So I set up a room at home, as you can see. And then this isn't going to be about me because I'm getting ready to make a point. So let's say that we started doing our podcast, and then you started to introduce me to other people you met along the way, such as Gary Byers. And he's like, I would say, what do you call him? The number one. So the number one for Dr. Steve Collins and the number one for Dr. Stripling over at Shiloh. something like that. I'll just say, and he's also a dean. So he introduced me to a lot of cool people out there, and they've been on the program. And so over a year, we started with like 8,500 subscribers. And we always go over this before you always ask me the numbers before we started going. And we actually started today with what 97,700 subscribers. So everybody, thanks a lot, and especially Dr. David Graves, because he's done so much for the program and introducing other scholars and other topics to the program. He does his wonderful jobs with his PowerPoints. And I just wanted to get his history, because usually when I introduce him, it's always that formal, your education and where you excavated at. And then I tell everybody you're an author and an editor, publisher, what, and then, okay, then we go into, but we really didn't. Now I got you on a podcast of your background so that I can blackmail you later on.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, it's
now
always good to be on the channel, George, and I always love to tell the stories and make archaeology fun. And there's a lot to tell, and it's good to maybe inspire some of the young people to pursue their dreams.
right. That's a good part, because just as people influenced us when we were younger, that we can also influence other people in their lives. If the career is archaeology, when they get done and they're getting ready to retire from their occupation, archaeology can become a great hobby.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do that. I mean, there's a lot of people, I believe, that's over at Trinity Southwest that have retired, and they're making archaeology their hobby. And then they also have over at Trinity, which is like 10 miles away from where I'm at now, they got Veritas University, which is accredited. And you went over, you did a podcast teaching for Trinity Southwest University. And that was only like a couple months ago, right? And you were doing courses. Yeah, you were doing courses. How long were they? They were like 6-hour courses. You did something like that.
Yeah, I did a class for them, a course that they wanted me to do. I do so many of them. What was it now? It was on the Old Testament Iron Age period. I think it was. Yeah, it was the Iron Age. I had to do the Iron Age for them, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I forgot to put that down on my resume. I must get that.
Let's say that's what I'm here for, them to help you out. You just had a birthday too. How old are you now?
Oh, I just turned 68.
68. We're not that far apart. I'm 65 and cruising here, so the 3 years difference. Look how much you got done. I just got a bunch of artifacts. You got all these books and everything.
Yeah.
But
I've hung up my trowel now. I'm done the digging days, but I can still write and tell stories about them. So I'll keep on doing that. These podcasts have been fun. George, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to share the stories, and I'm glad folks out there are enjoying them.
Right, and they're going to be absolutely, and they're going to be on YouTube for a long time to come. And of course, we're going to keep on doing more and more. And we got other contacts that we got coming on, and so we're just going to have some more fun. That's all.
Yeah.
And once again, thanks for your time, and also telling us about your background and history and what got you into archaeology, your excavation experiences, the items that you discovered, and that you actually met your wife at the dig. Was it the night air? We don't know. You didn't tell us what it was.
It's just some of that Sodom dust, I think.
I would have said that, but okay, because we know what happens at Sodom stays at Sodom, or is that Vegas? I don't remember. But anyway, thanks so much for your time. This has been lovely, and now that we got you down and everything's recorded, like I said, now I can just say, hey, David, need you to do a program for me. And if you say no, I say, hey, remember that thing that we recorded? I'm gonna bring it out. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. You have a great day, everybody. Thanks for subscribing, and I appreciate your time. And be sure to tell people about Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down, sponsored by Bible Interact. And everybody have a great day.